Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing my first 15-minute game that I've recorded here on ICC. And as you can see, I'm still at my provisional 1600 rating, and I'm playing NoPainNoGain, who's 1886, which I bet is a pretty good rating for 15-minute. And anyways, I wanted to play 15-minute because I've had a lot of requests for it on my channel. So I hope you guys enjoy this one. He's playing a Nimzo with c5. And in this position, okay, so I have to remember what to do. I can play knight f3, so I think I'll do that. a3 was also possible. I'm just going to check out this opponent real quick. Okay, so this guy's played a fair amount of 15-minute, played over 100 games. Highest rating of 1992. But yeah, I wanted to play this time control because I've had a lot of requests for it on my channel. And I know you guys would probably appreciate some longer games that allow for more feedback and more explanation of my thought processes during the actual game. So here you have it. I'm choosing a very sedate continuation, by the way. E3. I think something like bishop g5 would have been more ambitious, but I've been burned by this c5 line in the past, so I'm going to handle it carefully. I'm going to proceed with caution. This is kind of bad luck for this guy. He's playing an IM who's 1600 according to their standard rating, but this is just the rating that everyone starts with, and I'd never played the 15-minute pool on ICC, so I'm just going to defend the knight on c3. I have played in rapid tournaments before, which have a time control like anywhere from 0 to 30 minutes per side, but it's been a long, long time. Like, it's not a time control I play very frequently. I think I'm going to play a3 now and just try to secure the bishop pair. And I expect him to take on c3 because, I mean, if bishop a5, I could play b4. I'll take with my bishop. So now I have the bishop pair. I'm slightly behind in development. That's common in the Nimzo from the white side, especially if you're choosing a line with queen c2. Because queen c2 is a time-consuming move. You're expending an entire tempo to ensure that your pawns don't become doubled. So white lags and behind in development. Typical Nimzo scenario, though. Like, I have the two bishops. He's got a slight development lead. The onus is still on black to try to equalize. I mean, he might be considering what happens if bishop takes f6. Now I could play bishop d3 and try to win a tempo, because after bishop d3, I would be threatening to take on f6 and then win his h7 pawn. So I think I will do that, even though I sort of feel like my bishop would be better on e2 in order to keep the d file clear, so I could post a rook there coming up. But I think the fact that this wins a tempo makes it pretty much a no-brainer. Okay, he's letting me win a pawn now. It's interesting. I think I should do it. So I take on f6, he takes with the queen. I take on h7, he goes king h8. Probably I just move this guy back. Yeah, he might have a tiny bit of compensation, but honestly, I don't really see that much for him. I could also take on d5 first. But if I take on d5, he takes with the pawn. I don't really want to open up further lines when I do win the pawn. So how I'm anticipating this will go if I go for the pawn is I'll play bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, bishop takes h7, king h8, bishop back to d3 so I don't get my bishop trapped. He'll probably take on c4. I take with the bishop, and then maybe he'll play e5 to free his bishop. But I'm going to go for that because it's principled. I think this is the best line. And it's the whole reason I played bishop d3 on the previous move. So I see no reason not to play it. Is this a picture of Max Hervé, the former Dutch world champion?
Check.
An amateur boxer, or professional boxer, I think. Semi-professional, maybe. And mathematician. I think that's him. Okay, now I'll bring the bishop back. Maybe I'll ask him after the game. Who's that, after the game? Who's that guy in your avatar? I think it is. I think it's Max. Okay. So I would expect him to take on c4, like I was saying, because now that he's down a pawn, his mindset has to shift. He doesn't want to proceed as normal. Like a normal move might be like, I don't know, bishop d7 or something, and he plays it. But if you're in this situation as black, there has to be like some level of urgency. Because if you, I mean, it's kind of early to say like, you know, you should be panicking, but he should be looking to gain some sort of compensation, whether it's like opening the position or trying to like hassle my queen or something and gain some tempos. Granted, it's not easy to do, but that's why I was expecting him to take and then push e5 and try to develop the bishop more aggressively. Here I can saddle him with the isolated pawn. I can take on d5, but I don't want to open this bishop. So I think I'm just going to castle. I'll just castle short. And I bet he plays rook a c8. And now I think I want to move out of the way with my queen. I'm just not comfortable with the x-ray situation on the c-file. You guys know from my videos I'm always like very heads up about that. So let's bring this guy here. I don't see anything wrong with that. Maybe once I move this knight too, queen h5 will be on the agenda, and he'll have to consider his open king in the exposed h-file. I'm still defending the pawn on c4. May not be a bad idea for him to take. And then after I take with the bishop, yeah, play knight a5. I'm kind of surprised he did it in this form, though, because now I think I can take on d5 and then stick my knight on d4 to blockade. I like the look of that a lot. As long as there's no tactical problem. Yeah, I like the look of this very much. And go knight here. Great square for my knight, firmly blockading the isolated pawn. I'm threatening queen h5, which would force him to respond with queen h6, and I could either trade queens then or take his pawn on d5. I think he will see that threat. I'm pretty sure he will. So like g6 would be a reasonable move for him. But now I feel like I'm organized. I feel like my position is coming together. Okay, he didn't see it, or he didn't respond to it. Pretty sure he didn't see it. So now I can check, and after queen h6, I could even take the pawn on h7. Can do that. Yeah, let's check.
Check.
This is like clearly a good move. I'm not going to even look at anything else because this is this is just that good. Okay, so now I can drive his king out if I want with queen h7, king f8, queen h8. But he goes to e7, and actually it's not so easy to exploit his king there. So I think I should just take this pawn, which is actually a double attack on his bishop on d7 and his knight on a5. You guys remember my undefended pieces chess fundamentals lecture? Maybe it's about to be applied to real life against a pretty good player. Yeah, let's just take that guy. Undefended piece, undefended piece. The key to chess is the double attack. So, how does he avoid losing a piece now? I don't know if he can. There's no square. Oh, queen d8 would avoid losing a piece. I was just looking at squares for his queen to go to where he could avoid it. Yeah, queen d8. It's a depressing move to have to play. He's going right in between his two rooks, and it's a full retreat, full-scale retreat right back to the first rank, but it might be forced. I don't think anything else fits the bill. If he goes knight c6, I take on d7. He can play knight e5, but then I have queen f5, and I keep the extra piece. So now that I'm pretty certain he has to play queen d8, I am already going to start considering what I'm going to play against queen d8. My first instinct was rook fd1, and I like that move because I'll be lining up with his queen on d8, and there's a lot of stuff in the way, but I think I could clear that pretty fast. I was also looking at queen d8, bishop g6 as a way to apply more pressure to f7, but that seems a bit superficial. I don't think I will do that. I think I'll probably play rook fd1 or maybe rook ac1 to offer a trade of rooks on the c-file. Yeah, come to think of it, rook ac1 is also very good. I have a slight preference for rook fd1. Pretty certain he has to play queen d8, though. I don't see anything else. Looking for ways he could, yeah, like do something crazy like that. I just don't think this works. Like, I mean, couldn't I legitimately take either minor piece now? I mean, maybe his idea, if I take the knight, is he's going to go rook e5 and then try to swing his queen or rook over to g5 because he'll be playing rook e5 with tempo. I just don't believe it, though. Even there, I think I'm going to take his bishop because that seems like the most straightforward. But even the other line looks good. So if I take his bishop and he plays, let's say rook e5 again, I can just go queen f3, right? And then he can check me on g5, but no big deal. I play king h1. I've got all my bases covered. Yeah, this is no problem. Let's just grab that guy. Rook e5 is his only active move. Now I can go here. Yeah, again, don't see any issue with this. Just double checking. Yeah, let's do it. Rook g5, king h1. If he doesn't play rook g5, I'll probably still play king h1 just to safeguard my king. And I'll be posting a rook on g1 very shortly. It really went down for him, downhill when he overlooked the point of bishop d3. If he could have a do-over on move 11 instead of d5, I'm pretty certain he would play h6, which would just deal with the threat. Yeah, because outside of some disaster for me in this position, I'm going to win 100% of the time.
Check.
Maybe Magnus could beat me with black from here, but probably not. No way, actually. It's like the joke that was going around after Magnus won the world championship and Magnus was just taking over the chess world last year. It was like, Magnus could win this position with either color. He's so good, it doesn't matter what side of the board he's on. That knight on d4 is just beautiful. So he's offering a trade. I do not want to play knight takes c6 here. That would be really foolish and hang my queen with mate. That would be a nice way to go out, wouldn't it? But I can just take his queen. I'm not going to look for anything else. And then I think just take his knight and probably play rook g1. Simple, simple. Easy stuff. Don't make it complicated when you have this big of an advantage. I mean, maybe there's some better way, some way I could gain even more material and keep the pieces on the board. And even the computer might like that. But if you see like a human way to play for a win, just do that. Make it easy on yourself. Like, I'm just going to trade. Even though this like allows him to straighten out his pawns, it's fine. Let's bring this rook over to d1. Now I'm threatening bishop h7. Discovered attack on his rook. So I bet he moves his king. Yep. Let's just bring our king up. That's one thing for any beginners watching this video. If your primary method of reviewing your games is using the engine, which is fine, just be cautious about putting too much emphasis on the engine continuation, especially in positions where like you're already clearly winning or you're already clearly losing. If there's an eval showing like -5 and you play a move that like takes you to -6 or -7 and you can't really see what's wrong with it, don't worry because you're in a lost position already. It doesn't really, most of the time that sort of thing will not matter. Likewise, like here, the engine's going to say I'm like +6 or something. I don't know. +4 or 5, whatever. But I'm probably passing up some moves that could push me to like even higher. But I know it's not even worth my time and energy to try to figure that out. Because I know if I just play normal moves, I'm going to win. So I'm not really concerned about winning in the most precise computer-like way when it's just a win playing natural moves, and especially safe moves, not allowing him massive counterplay. So hopefully that makes sense. So he might be playing around with some idea of f3. I think I'll just put my bishop on e4. Well, I could probably wait on that move even. Let's just bring our rook in. Let's go rook here. And he can play f3 check, but I'll just slide our king over to d2. So I'll just activate the rook and attack his a7 pawn. And the other thing is you don't have to be in a hurry to win either. You know, I said just choose continuations that make sense to you and that are not too complicated.
Check.
And that involves not hurrying. You know, just because I'm up a bishop, I don't feel like I have to end this game before move 40 or something. I'm just going to play it by ear and see what happens. Okay, I'm going to go e4. And then just put my king on e3. Just to get rid of this pin that I'm currently under. My king will be feeling very comfortable on e3. Making sure not to give his rook too much counterplay. So I like the fact that the c file is mine with my rook on it, and the d file is blocked. If I were him, I'd like try to transfer the rook over to h6 and maybe attack this pawn, but it's such a far-fetched thing for him to save the game at this point that it almost doesn't matter. He probably will play rook h6 because it's one of the few active things he can do. And he defends his pawn. Okay, so here I see a simplifying continuation, which I'm going to go for, even though I will lose a pawn temporarily to do it. And if you guys see it, you can try to pause the video and see if you can figure it out. So how can I trade and get into a very clear endgame? We already are almost in an endgame. How can I make this even more clear? Okay, so I'm going to reveal the solution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check on e7 with the idea that if he plays king d6, I'll play e5 check, and then I will take his rook. And even though I'm losing a pawn in the process, I've got his most valuable piece remaining, his rook, off the board, and I also win the pawn on f3, so it works out material-wise to a wash. And this just has such an immediate clarifying effect. You know, it's essentially just over now. I'll play a4, just stop his pawns. Now he's in Zugzwang. He's going to lose a pawn on the next move no matter what. And he resigned. Woohoo, my rating went all the way up to 2288. Nice provisional rating. Oh, I'm going to ask him if that was Max Hervé in his avatar. So I'm going to say, thanks for the game. And is that Max Hervé in your avatar? Let's see what he says. While I'm waiting on his response, we'll start going through this. So I played the queen c2 line. c5 is one move that black can try here. It's not as popular as castles, or even d5. I think d5 might be slightly more popular too, but it's up there. It's a challenging continuation. So I took. He went here. I just played knight f3, normal move. So I don't want to try to hold on to this pawn. Like, I'm not going to play some greedy move like bishop e3. Because this pawn's already in his half of the position. He's going to attack it and win it. There's not a whole lot I can do about it. So I'm just going to try to develop normally. Now, e3 is like a pretty passive move, I was explaining, but I think it's fine. I don't feel obligated to do anything completely super active here. I don't like queen a5 for him. I think he's making too much effort to win a pawn that he could just take immediately if he wanted. So I think this whole operation was a little flawed. And after a3, I'm gaining the bishop pair. Yeah, because if bishop a5, I play b4 and fork his queen and bishop. He could maybe play queen a5 here, but I could just play like rook d1, and he'd either have to take my knight or move the bishop all the way back, which looks very strange and probably is just bad. So a3 he took, I took with the bishop. And then here. Yeah, and I played bishop d3, and I mentioned that I actually felt like e2 was the better square for this bishop. It's less exposed here. Even though d3 is a better diagonal, I think because I'm going to castle and he has this pawn that could be a target on d7, I would like to get my rook over there as soon as possible. So I think if I can play my rook over rook fd1, I would love to do that. But since bishop d3 essentially wins me at tempo because of the threat that occurred in the game, I think it's better to play this. And I do believe here he should play h6, just to get his pawn off the h7 square. Let's see if the computer agrees. Computer says e5. Okay, that's another way of dealing with the threat, just blocking me from playing bishop takes f6. It does give a nice advantage to white. e5 creates some weaknesses, like now the d5 square is weakened. It's suggesting I do this, and then let's say h6 or g6, and then put the knight on e4. And I might end up with excellent control over d5. So it seems like he's already in a spot of trouble at this point. Interestingly, the computer just says I should castle here. It doesn't prioritize going for the pawn. Okay, now it likes bishop takes f6 more. For a second it was saying castles, which I'm sure would preserve a large advantage for white as well. So here, I really thought he had to play with a little more sense of urgency. Maybe bishop d7 itself is not so bad. But like if it were me, I'd be looking at ways to open up the game and maybe get in, something like that to try to get this bishop out to a more active position. Maybe be able to play e4 with his pawn later, or at least threaten e4. Something to shake the boat a little bit, rock the boat, because if you've lost a pawn, you shouldn't panic. I'm not suggesting you panic and go crazy trying to prove compensation, but you have to shift your mindset. You no longer want to play in a completely neutral way. You want to be trying to change the character of the position so you can get back in the game. Just as in any sport, right? Any team that's down and suddenly finds like the game turning around on them in a negative way has to do something to, put more pressure on their opponent. So rook ac8. So he was extracting my queen, and I think queen e2 is a good move because there's no immediate threat on my queen, but if I play something like, let's say I play rook fd1, I would just get kind of nervous about possibilities like this. And I know the computer is saying like you can play queen takes c4 because I can bring my queen over here if necessary. But it's a pretty fast game. I know that queen e2 is a good investment in my future position because I don't want that queen lined up with his rook permanently. So I'm happy with that decision. And I was criticizing his move knight a5. I don't like that. I think if he's going to go knight a5, he should capture first and then play knight a5. That seems like a better option. And then he doesn't end up with this weak, isolated d-pawn. So he went knight a5 immediately, and I got to inflict this isolated pawn and then play knight d4. So this is great. Even if it was equal material, this would still be awesome for me because when you're playing against an isolated pawn, you want to blockade the square in front of it to immobilize the pawn and then try to attack it later, generally. Unless you can win the isolated pawn right away. So this is an excellent outpost for my knight, like the best square on the board for that knight. Protected by the pawn on e3. The only way he can really get rid of it is if he goes knight back to c6 and offers an exchange, which, given that I'm up a pawn, would probably play into my hands. So, yeah, I was expecting him to play g6 here to address the queen h5 threat. And I've just got lots of good ways to play. Simple way would be like rook ac1, just try to oppose him on the file. I was thinking like f4 might be interesting, just to try to play f5. Or if not f5 now, like just gain some space. Maybe I even have rook lift plans in the future. Kind of vague plans at the moment, but he did this. He just overlooked the threat. Check. Yep, and I took this pawn. And the computer agrees queen d8 is the only way to defend these two loose pieces, these undefended pieces. And undefended pieces drop off. As we know, they're a magnet for tactics. So he had to play queen d8 and grovel, and I think I was saying I was going to play rook f d1 in this case, which I still like that move. Still like that. Rook a c1 is also good. I'm up 2 pawns. I should be pretty easily winning if I keep my head screwed on straight. So, yeah, he did that, which was pretty much pure desperation, and it looks like I have a good choice of moves, taking the bishop or taking the knight. I chose to take the bishop. Even though the computer says queen takes a5 is better, again, this is like a case where you shouldn't really read into that too much. Because you see the difference, like, queen takes a5 is +8 for me, or whatever. Taking here is +6.5. That doesn't matter. That's like, you know, that's like someone walking up to you and saying, like, how happy would you be on a scale of 1 to 100 if I gave you, you know, $1 billion or $1.2 billion? You know, it doesn't matter because it's such an obscene amount of money. Like, you're going to be through the roof either way, $1 billion or $1.2 billion. So it's the same thing here. You shouldn't read into that eval too much. 6.5 is enough to win this position like 3 times over. So yeah, rook e5. And on principle, I like g takes h3 better because that's the piece closer to my king. That's the piece that could connect if he lands some tactical blow. So, I mean, queen takes a5 made me slightly nervous because, like, he knew this, and I just saw ideas that he could bring this over here. Again, I'm sure white's defending in many ways, but yeah, like one way it says is like I can just calmly play bishop e4 and reinforce. But why even do that when taking on h3 is keeping my queen closer to the defense and getting rid of one of his attacking pieces.
Check.
Yep, and the rest of it was not interesting. It was just, well, you know, it's instructive. It wasn't that exciting. It was just an instructive way to show how you want to win a position like this. You can see that I was going for exchanges. I was making a few concessions, like by trading here. I am allowing him to undouble his pawns. So in a perfect world, like, I would not like to do that, but again, the scoreboard is such that I can trade points with him, and it's clearly in my favor. It's just war of attrition, and any exchange he makes reflects so negatively on his position and so positively on mine that I'm not worried about conceding some small positional factor, like giving him straightened out pawns instead of doubled isolated pawns. Yeah, and now just everything's safe. I brought the king over because the king was the only piece that wasn't activated yet for me, and kings are best centralized as soon as the endgame hits, if you can. So I came over here, defended the bishop, which subsequently freed up the rook.
Check.
You know, he plays f3. I pushed e4 in order to get the king here. And I think the last notable thing is this this exchanging operation that I was talking about. So the e5 move. Okay, even here the computer does like e5. So it approves of that, and we're into massively positive territory. We're into territory where it'll start finding a forced mate pretty soon if we give it long enough to think. Well, went up quite a bit.
Check.
So e5, even if I were to lose a pawn to do this, I would still do this in a heartbeat, because without his rook, like, his chances of even swindling me go down so significantly. And here he resigned. Okay, well, I hope you guys enjoyed that first 15-minute game, and since my rating is 2238 after this game, I'll be looking forward to playing some higher-rated players, although this guy was pretty high. I mean, it's a good player, it's a good rating, so maybe I'll get some games with even some title players in the future. So please leave me any feedback, especially on this format, since this is a new thing. And, we never got to find out if this was Max Hervé or not, so if you know who this is, my opponent didn't write back to me, but if you know who this is, let me know. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you have a good one. Talk to you later.